You can call me Mr. Glenn. That's how I'm known professionally. If you're a child that's worked with me, my name is Mr. Glenn. In my professional life, that's how I like to be referred to. We're in a professional call. My name is Mr. Glenn. I'm a teacher, and I also have a master's in special education with a specialization in autism, and that led me to getting my BCBA. I started my career in a long time ago, ashamedly. In 2007, I worked in a school in England for children with autism, and that wasn't my initial intention in my career, but I've been doing things like that ever since. I helped found a school here in Austin and ran that for 13 years. And now I'm doing some consultancy and being a man about town. But that's me. Today we're going to talk about attention and how it's how as parents we can use that to help our children grow into the children we'd like them to be. But before I did that, I just want to recap what we mean or where we're coming from when we talk about behavior as a science. And so the first thing is that the first thing? I wrote these slides. I don't even like this order, but this is the order we're going to do. That's fine. All right. So observation and measurement standards. So behavior is a subset of psychology. So if we have the big umbrella of psychology, and then we go under that, we have a smaller subset called behavioral psychology or behavioral science. One of the reasons for developing behavioral science is that so much of psychology is dominated with ideas and ideas that are difficult to quantify. And some psychologists felt that this didn't represent a good science. This was more like a social studies of we're just looking at people and coming up with our ideas, but it doesn't quite meet the criteria of science. So one of the things that behavior analysts want to do is why don't we concentrate our psychology onto the psychology of things that we can see, so the things that we can observe, and the things that we can measure. Typically in behavior analysis, the two ways that we measure behavior are by counting it. You did that 4 times, you did that 3 times, and then we can measure the duration of time that you did that for. There's other ways we can measure, but that's where we start. As opposed to how do you measure happiness? There isn't really a unit or a measurement for happiness. And when we measure happiness, we tend to use like rating scales and things like that. Those are very, very helpful, but they don't quite meet the criteria of what you want for a hard science that's based purely on what we can measure. And as we grow in our technology and understanding of the world, what we can measure should expand. And as that expands, we should be able to increase what was entailed in behavior science. But right now, what we can see is just the things we can count and time. It's a pragmatic science. This is important for lots of reasons. I think this is my favorite reason. When we engage in this thing, oh yeah, this order is wrong. I'm going to jump to empirical. All right. When we engage in science, one of the things we're trying to do is to figure out what we know. And the way that we figure out what we know is we do tests and we replicate those tests. And then that forms the body of what we know. In the process of doing that, you could say, why are you doing that? One of the reasons people might do something is because I want to understand the truth, or I want to understand what's real. But with behavior analysis, we are operating under the assumption that we are wrong. Everything we know today will be replaced with new ideas that science discovers in the future. Or even if it's not everything, there are lots of things that we are acting on today based on our best knowledge, but that best knowledge in the future will change. And that means what we're doing today is wrong. So how do we live in a world where we're trying to do our best and also know that we're wrong? So that's the part of being pragmatic. And pragmatic is the idea that our unit of success is not whether or not we discover the truth, but it's whether or not we discover what's effective or helpful. And so to give you an easy example, I look in the mirror in the morning and say, I'm really ugly. That might be true, it might be not true. But when I say that, if that recruits me thinking I'm really ugly, and that's okay. I'm still going to go to work. I'm still going to do all the things I've got to do. And I'm going to make sure that I have good friendships because my looks don't impact my ability to have friends. then we would say that that look in the mirror of saying I'm ugly, that might be helpful if it recruits me to do new and better things for myself. But if I look in the mirror and say I'm ugly, and then I start getting down and I stop socializing and I stop doing things because of that's how I feel about myself when I look in the mirror, again, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, whether or not I'm ugly. What matters is the effect of it. And if the effect of it is leading to a less healthy life or more healthy life, the behavior analyst is interested in the things that lead to a healthier life. I don't have many screens, but I was going to say thumbs up if that makes sense. I'm just going to say it makes sense. I want to put observation measurement standards. Thank you, Verity Office. I put that in twice. Guys, the slides get better, or they don't. Who knows? And then inductive research, we need to know about that. That's just another thing for another day. Okay, so this story begins with Pavlov. And many of you did this in your psychology 101 class. Now that I'm doing this, I should have a nice picture of Pavlov standing with the dog on the table, but we'll improve. Okay, so Pavlov is famous for, in the 1890s, getting dogs to salivate to the sound of a bell. The reason why this is really important is because that bell is arbitrary. It's made up. It doesn't matter what it is. It has no link to the food. And the fact that an animal will do something with no, for want of a better word, no internal reason to like a bell, no internal reason to know that a bell is going to help signify that food is coming. The only way that they developed the relationship with the bell and the food was from their lived experience, and that lived experience was created by the scientists. It just shows that animals or organisms can be responsive to arbitrary stimuli. And then with later research, we found out that humans, as animals, are also able to respond to arbitrary stimuli. And a nice, easy example of that is money. There's nothing about a $100 bill that, as a newborn baby out of the womb, oh, that's valuable. But we sure enough learned that that $100 bill is very valuable. And then Pavlov's responsible for what we refer to as respondent conditioning. You don't really need to know that, but it's there. Okay, thank you, Shaz. All right, so later on, and he was a prolific author, so I just put his period of mass production as the 30s to the 70s. I think his first book came out in 1938. I don't know. Okay, so B.F. Skinner is considered the godfather of behavioral science. He's also the Principal Skinner from The Simpsons was named after him. Little fun fact. And what Skinner was most interested in is reinforcement. And when he studied reinforcement, that developed the side of the science that we refer to as operant conditioning. Again, you don't really need to know that. If you are interested in reading more about Skinner, here are the top 3 hits from my perspective. Science and Human Behavior. That's the book where he describes his worldview. If you really want to learn, that's where you learn it. It's all in Science and Human Behavior. There are free copies everywhere to download for PDF to read on a Kindle. And you can, and most of the streaming websites like Spotify also have copies that are read out. If, I don't know, you're driving to Canada and you want to learn about a human. Then we have Verbal Behavior. This book is by Behavioral Geeks, considered his best work. And one of the interesting things is he wrote this as a theoretical book. And even literally the last conference I went to, it happened again where someone did a study, and when they did a word search, text search, there's a word there, for that phenomenon, they found that Skinner had referred to it in Verbal Behavior, and the prediction he had made was right 70 years ago, however long ago it was. And the fact that that keeps on occurring, people really think of that as being an incredible piece of work. And then finally, my personal favorite is The Technology of Teaching, how he describes what it is to be a teacher and what it is to build reinforcement in a classroom setting. It's just lovely. So much of it is outdated, so you really just have to read it more as a historical book for the ethos of it. But I've read it several times. I really enjoy it. And then finally, much like the politics of today, where the person on the other side of the aisle is evil, dumb, stupid, all the things that people say about the other person. That also happens in academic settings. And I feel that Skinner is often described as a cold, hard, horrible man. And in my experience, when I've read his work, it's like, this guy's great. He sounds so fun. And then when you hear his daughter, Julie Vargas, who's now a prominent researcher, describe her childhood, she's like, my dad was so loving to me and my sister. We had the best time. And so I just wanted to clarify sometimes, and I think one of the big reasons is he would use lots of technical language to describe very human things, like the child was inserted into the apparatus. So you've already lost the audience before you've even described what you were doing. And so there's some things like that. But I just want to say, he seems nice. All right. Next guy, come on. Who have we got? Okay, Dr. Lovaas. So he was he had the first, literally as that bullet point says, he had the first credited intervention for being successful for kids with autism. As part of that intervention, he just developed discrete child teaching, and that is likely what your children will still be using those techniques for, at least in part of their day, not for the full day, but in part of their day. That technology has remained to be really effective. One of the things to clarify and to own our history, at the time it was big to talk of curing your patients. They're now cured of autism, whereas today we don't really say those things. It's far more a reflection of your ability to function in the world and to express your ideas and to share things that are important to you with others. And we more set criteria of that. As long as you can do that, then neurodiversity can be a superpower. It can be what makes you so uniquely you, and that would never be something we'd want to cure or take away. We just want you to be able to enjoy and interact with the world. With Lovaas, I think it was in the 60s, he did a study called the Sissy Boy Study. And it was one where there was an effeminate boy that was likely homosexual that they were trying to punish things that he did that were feminine and reinforce things that he did that were masculine. This study was a disaster. One of the participants ended up committing suicide as a result of this study. I think it's really important just to acknowledge that in the spirit of science and in the spirit of people trying to do their very best for people that they see really need help, you can really make big mistakes. And that's something that Lovaas has done, and that's part of his story. And in the same way that we have people like Michael Jackson, known pedophile. So do you separate the artist from the art? Is Billie Jean still a good song? We're about to have Halloween. Can we listen to Thriller? And that's a personal choice, but just I think it's fair to say with Lovaas, that's the whole picture. And then hopefully it's not going to show it. Don't know. I did want, if you type YouTube, if you go on YouTube and type Lovaas 1987, there's an hour-long video, which is a documentary of the research paper he first published. It's really excellent. It's really old. There's some practices that we definitely would not do today. And if you want to just get that historical insight into what the world was like in the 80s, how individuals with developmental disabilities were treated in the 80s, and what were the ideas about how we can help them in their lives, it's a really nice timestamp. And then, I thought I wrote more about Brian. Okay. Oh, and it's Brian Iwata in 1991. He did a study into why children with autism hurt themselves and others. And this study was considered groundbreaking in that it gave an assessment tool to treat students individuals based on the function of their behavior, not the symptoms of the behavior. So it's not that you hit yourself, it's the reason why you hit yourself. And the real reason that this has been groundbreaking is that there have been countless individuals where the reason that they were doing something made no sense to everyone that cared for them in their life. We just don't understand why they do this. We just don't understand why they do this. And everyone is putting their very best heart and soul into trying to help that person. And the interventions just weren't working. And then as soon as we had a tool that helped us figure out the function, it meant that we could build interventions that worked. And ironically, many of these interventions we already knew about. but we didn't know that that intervention went with this problem. And since the 90s, we really have started to develop that, and many children's lives have been changed. I was going to skip this. I did, but I am actually just going to say on the bottom. I'll just take it to it. That's fine. All right. So if you look a lot across the top, we have antecedent behavior consequence. You've probably been taught about this. It's like in the 101 of ABA, you get taught about the ABCs. And to give context to the 4 people I've just spoke about, Pavlov, he was interested in the antecedent and behavior relationship. So the relationship between the bell ringing and the salivation. That's what Pavlov was interested in. Then we have Skinner underneath. He was interested in the behavior and consequence relationship. And so that's part of the ABC chart. So pushing the lever and the food being dispensed. Lovaas was interested in if we made the antecedents really small and discrete, and we practice them with high rates of reinforcement, can we get kids to do sophisticated things? And the answer is yes, but this starts out with, what is it? Holding up a picture of a cat. The child says cat. They receive praise. And then Brian Iwata is we have that target behavior, and what we're doing is we're manipulating the different consequences or testing the different consequences to find out why someone did something. I did just want to give a footnote that the science has grown still, and really since the teens, the 20 teens, Greg Hanley, who's the current editor of JAVA, which is the major journal for behavior analysts, we've been moving away from the functions that Brian Iwata proposed towards consequences that are synthesized, and also thinking about it less in an ABC of there's the behavior and then the consequences delivered, but that the behavior and the consequence are experienced at the same time. And as that science develops, it's not going to change the advice I give. And so I think it's actually easier for me to go back to Brian Iwata's ideas because it's more succinct and easier to describe, even though the science is progressing. Okay, so when I said that he tested the different consequences, there were 4 types of subsets that Brian Iwata devised for how you can receive reinforcement. So one way to receive reinforcement is that you can receive, yeah, I was being silly. I wanted to say the definition in the title. That whenever you're receiving a tangible reinforcer, we call it tangible. But the reason I want to do this is to highlight that we want these words to be simple. Anytime you give a kid something, you give them an apple, you give them a toy, you give them the TV remote, you turn on music, that is tangible reinforcement. It's something that you've given. The act of doing is reinforcing within itself. Easy examples are whistling, I don't know, humming to yourself, anything that you do for yourself. Meditation, there we go. The act of meditation is one that's reinforcing within itself, and you don't need any external stimuli to increase the probability of you doing that meditation. It's just the act of doing something. And then this terminology actually bounces around depending on the organization that you're working with. Some people prefer to call it self-stimulatory. Other people refer to it as sensory or sensory needs, because often in individuals with autism, it really does show up as that there's an, what's the word? It's not a sharpness. It's a, it's like a hypersensitivity to sensory input. Maybe that's not quite what I'd say, but it's in the right ballpark. And then what we're going to be talking about for the remainder of today is the socially mediated reinforcement, so our attention. And that is for the person to receive reinforcement, they need another person there. If you crawl up behind someone and shout boo, you need them to scream. That scream is the attention. If you say, hey, Sarah, and Sarah says, what? She has now given you her attention. So it's the mediation of the reinforcement comes from the person. And finally, anytime we remove aversive stimuli, so that could be anything from your math facts to your alarm clock, That's escape. And technically that's negative reinforcement. A quick word on negative and positive reinforcement. Don't use those terms. They have very specific scientific meaning. And when they're used in common vernacular, it gets blurred about what you're talking about. And just say reinforcement. You don't need to say positive reinforcement. Reinforcement is often positive. You can just say reinforcement. Don't worry about saying negative or positive. It doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter. And then I guess as I'm changing slides, the reason it matters is because the behavioral profiles that you see change whether or not something is under the conditions of positive or negative reinforcement. And so it's actually a really interesting piece of study. And in day-to-day life, it doesn't matter to still call it reinforcement. There we go. All right, principles of behavior. Behavior is strengthened or weakened by its consequences. That's what we're talking about when we say reinforcement. Behavior ultimately responds better to positive consequences. Again, I just talked about don't say positive or negative reinforcement. And I mean positive in the good, the love, the people do better when honey and milk is poured on them, or you catch bees with honey. There we go. Behavior is a product of its immediate environment. So when behavior is studied, it is studied to the millisecond, and a consequence being delivered half a second later to 0.7 seconds later does have an impact. And really, the quicker you can get to something, the more immediate you can be in that moment, the more impactful your consequences are going to be. And this is true of all parenting, not just of behavior analysis, but all parenting. You only know if what you did worked with hindsight. So if I gave a positive consequence with the goal of reinforcement, I only know if it reinforced by being in the future. And when I'm in the future, I can look back with hindsight and be like, oh, that worked, or oh, it didn't work. And when you're a parent and you're like, I'm not sure what to do, and you do something, you have to have that unfortunate reality of in the future looking back and being like, I don't know, would have done it like this, but you didn't know because you were trying your best, because you're a human that tries their best to love their kid. And that's just part of life, is that we have to accept that we only know with hindsight if what we're doing is effective. Okay. So we have attention versus attention. Today, I'm talking about attention as a socially mediated consequence. So that's you as an organism providing things to the person that's behaving. I don't mean what's going on in your head, where your focus is, if you're daydreaming, all of that kind of like, where's my attention? I'm spaced out, or I'm struggling to pay attention. That's a slightly different phenomenon, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about what you do to your child that can be observed. Going back to Brian Iwata, when we said that he was able to identify the reasons that individuals engage in a behavior, the number one way he was able to demonstrate it is by getting behaviors to stop with the consequences that they were given. So in shorthand, at home, if you think, hey, I think my child is doing this to get my attention, if you give your child the attention and the behavior goes away, then that means it was likely reinforced by the attention. It's the stopping of the behavior that's the important thing. So if your spider senses are tingling and you're saying to yourself, I think my kid is doing this to get my attention, then you want to do that check to see if it stops. Equally, you can do a test and do the opposite of not giving it attention, giving it something else and seeing what happens. And if it continues and then it stops when you give it the attention, then you can be doubly satisfied that it's for attention. At this point, I do want to clarify that if your child is engaging in any extreme behavior, like hurting themselves or others, you need a professional to help you figure out why they're giving you attention. I'm talking about day-to-day living at home, like this is how we deal with children acting out. But if your concerns are about really severe behavior, then that is something that I can't specify enough, that you need professional help. You need a team of people to help you through multiple disciplines, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all. This is something you're going to have to work through. But I'm talking about day-to-day at home. Okay, so how can we give our attention to our children? The first way we do it is with our eyes. So if I say, don't give me your attention, what are you going to do with your eyes? You're going to close them or look away because you're not giving it to me. If I had everyone with their screen on and I was saying things that people didn't like and everyone turned their screen off, I was like, man, I'm losing their attention. So you might think that you're ignoring your child, but if you keep watching them from across the room, that child knows where your eyes are. Your eyes are one of the most powerful ways that you give attention. The second thing you can do is your location and proximity. Moving close to your child is also a form of attention. If your child does something and then you move closer, that is being reinforced by attention. Secondly, your sounds. I was supposed to say sounds and speech. It just says sounds. Okay. Anytime you make a sound, including words. But I think some parents get tricked into thinking that my words are the important part, not the sounds. But when you go, that sound, when a child was trying to make you annoyed, means that they won because they heard the, and equally the yelp of excitement, because that child did something amazing. Again, there were no words were said, but that sound was enough for that kid to do that behavior again, because that was incredible and they heard you make that cool sound. It's sounds and words. Obviously, I'm so proud of you. That's so incredible. All of those things count, but I did want to draw attention to the sounds. Anytime you touch your child, even the lightest touch is also a form of attention. And anytime you follow their direction, hey, Dad, can you give me a glass of milk? If I go and get that glass of milk. I know that technically that would be the tangible of giving the milk, but the fact that I'm following the direction does give it that attention piece. And then finally, your gestures, and that's similar to those sounds. So those body movements that you do that indicate that you are receiving the information that they're giving. Okay. So let's talk about when children act out. So when a child acts out, the very real human in you, the person that is a person, says, I need to punish them for behaving that way. I don't know where it comes from. It's just in us. It's just there to say, I need to punish them for behaving that way. You can't behave like that. And now you're going to receive a consequence. And that consequence is going to be a punishment. What we want to do instead, what we want to do to live a life where we feel a strong sense of connection and a healthy relationship with our children, and with children that develop and grow into humans that we love and respect, we say stuff like, I need to teach them how to behave appropriately. And I need to be more responsive to the appropriate behavior. So, as part of being more responsive to the appropriate behaviors, one of the things to caveat is that it's really important to ignore inconsequential age-appropriate behaviors, like the junky, annoying sound that siblings make between each other, all those squabbles. These happen. This is part of childhood. Kids moan. Kids do stuff. And you know what you have to do as a parent? Nothing. It'll iron itself out. They're kids. They're fine. Like, just give them 5 minutes. So there's a strong, like, you got to pick your battles. And there's so many things that kids do to act out. Just leave it be. And also, when we think about this, pick your battles, you've got to recognize what something's worth. So right now, if you're in a battle with your child about them cleaning their room, and like it is coming to a head, and there's tears every night, and you go to bed sparring about like they just won't charge a little bit. It's like, you know, it's okay to wave a white flag and say, I'm just going to be okay with the room being like this for this moment in time. It doesn't mean that as an adult they're going to be a slob and not be able to take care of themselves. It does mean that right now we're not in a space where I can fight that battle, and it's okay to say, I'm not going to fight it. That's not going to get my attention. I'm going to divert my attention to more important things, and I'll revisit this later. That's a long sentence. Unless what you're about to say or do has a high probability of making things better. This could be true of all parts of life. Don't say it and don't do it. You know, if you're watching your kids, again, we're thinking about ignoring these inconsequential stuff, if all that happens when you join the argument is that there's another person in the argument, don't join the argument. Let it be. Leave it go. And I think I like this analogy of the garden variety. So in our garden variety, what we want to do is water the seeds. So that's where I'm going to give all of my attention, and I'm going to ignore the weeds. Okay, so we're going to revisit these ways that we give attention, and now we're going to go through the ways to ignore. So we're going to limit the access to attention. With our eyes, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look away. Or you could look at other things like your phone. If your kids try and get your attention and you're trying to show that that's not a way that gets your attention, put your eyes somewhere else, and sometimes you can arbitrarily make that thing up. Similarly, if we want to remove our attention, then we're going to remove our location. We're going to make our proximity further away from our kids. With regard to sounds, we're going to try and be silent. That really is the biggest thing we can do, is be silent. We're going to avoid touch. We're going to avoid following directions. And we're going to avoid doing any gestures that indicate that what the child is doing is something that's going to get our attention. To give a more real life example, so I'm the eldest of 4, and my mum would sometimes give us chores to do, like we'd all go clean the lounge. And then my little brother Christian is a true middle child and would refuse to do anything to help. And so the classic argument would follow is that, Christian, go help. No, I'm not helping. Mom, Christian's not helping. And so for my mum, the way that she was able to ignore this, she didn't increase her proximity. She would just shout back, so, and then that would disarm us, because like, so you're not just going to come down and sort this all out? So no, you guys are going to figure it out. And then she'd carry on about her business. So it's not to be like a silent robot drone. It is important to pay attention to all of these different facets of how, despite removing yourself from the location, if you maintain eye contact, then they're still getting that attention. So it's important to think about all the different facets when you're removing yourself. Things we want to avoid when kids are acting out is pisser-offers. We can do things that make the kid more mad. We can do things like, that's it, you're not getting TV for a week. That's it. Blah, 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 blah. Insert blank. We're really good at making the kids mad. But if we make them mad and their behavior doesn't change, then we're not doing anything to punish them. We're just pissing them off. And there's some kind of revenge mechanism happening inside our bodies that gives that satisfaction of they're mad, so I feel better. But really, we want to be the bigger person in the room and avoid pisses offers. We also want to avoid control battles. If there's really a big fight for something, and like say it's give me the iPad, and then they're wrestling off you, and you're afraid you're gonna, it's like, let go, just let go and use calm words. Say, hey, I need you to give me the iPad. And yeah, we just don't want to engage in battles like that. Please don't spank. There's lots of things that work better. Yeah, just don't. And then the last one, this is probably the one that I had to give the most feedback to for parents, is you don't want to set up a lie. So say if my daughter has drunk all of the juice that was for her sister to take medicine, and so I go to the fridge and the juice for the medicine is gone because the older sister has drunk it all. Now, normal human me calls her over and is like, hey, what happened to the juice? But in doing that, what I do is I set up a lie, because it now encourages her to make up some far-fetched reason as to why the juice is missing, and not to take accountability for what's actually happened. So a much better version of when someone acts out is just to call what you saw. Hey, Beatrix, all the juice is missing. Why have you drunk it? Oh, no, that I gave a question there. Bad example. All the juice is missing. You know you're not supposed to have the juice, and then I give some arbitrary punishment. I don't know, go to your room for 10 minutes. Or whatever it is. But the important thing is you just state what you see and you don't give opportunities for them to explain their behavior. If you do have a child with a developmental disability, this is even worse. They're probably in their speech sessions learning about past and future tense and being able to describe things in a story. And then you're asking them to do what they did when they're in a heightened state. You're not going to get good answers. Don't ask questions. Just say what you saw and give the consequences based on what you saw. Prevention. Okay. So if we want to prevent challenging behavior, one of the things we're going to do is clearly communicate our expectations to your children. This includes how they're going to get your attention. For small children, it's everything from teaching them that touch my shoulder, I'm going to put my hand on your shoulder, and then we're going to wait, and then I'm going to give you all of my attention. The two good ways to do that is to role play, especially if you're about to do something that you know they need to be on their best behavior. They need to get your attention in a nice way. Say you're having a dinner party and you don't want them interrupting the whole time. You can role play different scenarios, and when you give the role play, you want to also practice being the child and they be the adult, and you do the thing that the child does. The child will find it very funny that you're doing the thing that they do, but it will also make it crystal clear that this is my expectation, that we're not doing this thing that we've just practiced doing. And then the other one is to set up a family contract. This would be like on a night like tonight when I'm in an evening meeting, to tell the kids, hey, if you're able to stay out of this room for the next hour, we're going to get XYZ. So we've just set it up before it's occurred. I need you to do this, and then you're going to get that. I know that for some families or for some parents that work from home, the second they get on a work call is a signal to their child that my parents' attention is not available because they're on the phone, and therefore I must go in and ask about a snack, restroom, all the ways just to keep on to their attention. Again, I'd really recommend both doing a role play of that and doing some family contracts of like, okay, I've got this call at 2 o'clock. So and depending on how old your kid is and what they know about time, but to clearly delineate, this is the time period that this will go on for, and this is what will happen if you're successful. And one other general prevention tip is to stay physically and verbally close to your children. If you're fortunate enough to live in a massive house, you might need to think about where you are in your house to where your child is. One of the reasons that you want to stay close to them is that means you are already giving them your attention. So that's going to reduce their bids for attention because they're already getting a whole bunch. They don't need more when they've already got it. And the other reason that we want to stay so close to them is that you, as a human interacting in your day, the probability of you capturing your kid doing something cool and praising it just increases when you're near them. That's why we want to be near them. The closer we are, the greater probability is that we'll catch the cool things that they do. I feel like I've already been through this some, but okay, for reinforcement, the ways we give attention, I've said this should be a test. Maybe I'll make this a test at the end. As a parent, how are you going to give attention? And if you could give an example of any of these, that would be great. But I am actually going to move on to give time for questions. Okay, so if you want to reinforce your kids at home, the important thing is to pick a small number of things, not 10 things, not 20 things, not 100 things, but 1 to 3 things. 1 is fine. The other thing we want to do is we want to write that down and share it with the other people that will be helping you. So if you're married, it will be to your partner, or if there's older siblings or anyone that's relevant, you want to share it with that person. And then your goal is to make this a daily practice and have marginal gains. Doing it on a Saturday for an hour might be really good, but the way that the types of behaviors that you see frequently occurring in the home is that they need frequent intervention, and that's likely going to be daily. Okay. So for this attention versus attention revisited, and I kind of want to go back. I want to do both slides at once. I'll flip. Okay. So for picking a target behavior, going back to our attention and like our focus, like me as a human, my ability to focus on my children, that might actually be the starting point. So it's not so much that you have a target behavior, but you have attention targets. You've noticed that the first 10 minutes when they come in from school, they're awful. That might be a time that you decide, I'm going to give my attention to my kids at that time. And it doesn't matter what shows up, but I'm going to be sure to praise the things that I see that are awesome. And just make sure that this is where my attention's at. My attention's not at thinking about what I'm going to cook dinner, or thinking about the chores that need to be done, or finding out, or I don't know, all the things that happen. Is that you're giving it your full attention. So when we are choosing to intervene in our children to help them learn new things, one of the first things we want to do is remove distractions. So a classic example is you put a phone away, or you can download apps that app limit. And as I touched on before, to really make sure that this is your only task. It really has to be the only thing you're doing right now is giving your attention to your kid. If you find your brain is not where your body is, and you'd like your brain to be better able to pay attention to your kids, some meditation techniques that typically help with regaining your attention. And this is a short practice, so it's going to take less than 30 seconds. This is not, I'm going to spend hours at the top of a mountain. This is in the moment. So the first thing to do is just to practice the practice of noticing. And so when you have a thought that pops in, I wonder if I should wear a black shirt or a blue shirt tomorrow. You can say to yourself, hey, I've noticed that I've had the thought of wearing a black shirt or a blue shirt tomorrow. And now I'm going to return my attention to where I'm at. And just taking your thought and saying it again and adding the phrase I've noticed to it has really been shown to help people with their attention. So that's a nice little thing. The other thing you can do, and that there's different ways that people number this, but it's 1, 2, 3 or 5, 4, 3, and different ways of doing it. But it's basically your 5 senses. So it might start with 1 thing you can smell, 2 things you can hear, 3 things you can see, and you just label those things to yourself. People also do it with colors. I'm going to see 1 blue thing, 2 green things, 3 red things, and it's amazing how those colors come to you just from your sitting position. It takes a short period of time, and it does help reestablish your attention. And then obviously classic breathing exercises, box breathing, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. The numbers don't matter. There's lots of different ways. Just find something that works for you. And then finally, your attention will wander. You're never going to give your kid your perfect attention. And that is okay. We're not asking for perfection. We're just asking for improvement. And with that, all the cliches are true. When it comes to giving your kids attention, you want to lean in. You want to live in the moment. You want to seize the day. I don't know. There's some silly cliches there, but they're re-spoken a lot for a reason, and that's because there's a fair amount of truth in them. And with that, any questions?
Hi, Gabia here. I have a question.
Yes.
So my particular child is about, 8. She's 8. And I feel like whenever I give her distance and stop giving my attention, she takes that opportunity to continue doing whatever she wants to do. But if I give the attention, and typically it is negative because by that time I'm like, I've told you this so many times. And I give you space to do it, and I give you a timer, and I give you space, and come back, and I just I don't know what type of.
Okay, so let's go back up to one of the very early slides. Okay, And so remember when Brian Water did this test, when he gave the consequence, the thing stopped. Okay. So for your 8-year-old, is it like they're playing on the iPad, or they're playing with their Legos or something like that?
For her in particular, it's like not cleaning her room, ripping and flipping around the house.
Okay.
like,
All right.
like she's in gymnastics, so I understand why she rips and flips. But the unkept room, like that's more so of the behavior
Yeah.
that I'm seeing.
Oh, okay. All right. So in this example, if we think of those gymnastic flips, what maintains you doing a gymnastic flip? Like, where would the reinforcement be coming from your daughter's perspective? It's unlikely to come from a tangible. She's not getting anything for it, but the act of doing it is reinforcing in itself. I think that's like the low hanging fruit of what is often happening when kids are flipping and spinning around. And that's also why the vocabulary has moved towards the OT language of sensory inputs. And so she might be meeting a sensory need there. The reason that sensory need might have manifested in her is because she's been given something she doesn't want to do. I don't want to clean my room. And that sets off a whole bunch of stuff in my body, including the fidgets, and that has me spinning around. But if we think about the very first thing it's the removal, is that the adverse thing is in place, which is the room. And if you think about in your example where you gave that, if you walk away, she still doesn't clean her room. If you come in there and get onto her, she still doesn't clean her room. So our attention is not having a meaningful impact on her room cleaning behavior. And it's really that all she's trying to do is get out of that, get out of that task. And so really the way I think about a task like that is, how many times has this happened? If this has happened more than 3 or 4 times, I think it's enough to say that it's a pattern. I think it might be reasonable to say that a young child doesn't want to clean their room. Big surprise. And so when we do that, we might need to start, and this would be more thinking about those contracts, start at the level that you know she can be successful. So the whole room might be too overwhelming and there's too much. But we might say, hey, I need you to pick up all the trash in your room. Or, hey, I need you to take the trash can out of your room and empty it. Or, hey, I need to make sure that all your underwear is in the laundry hamper. Or whatever it is, but whatever you can do to break the room into smaller steps would be helpful. The other thing that you might find helpful in a situation like that is to provide a checklist. And when we do checklists as parents, they should go through the I do, we do, you do. So initially, hey, we're going to clean your room. And guess what? I'm going to show you how this checklist works. And you're doing the room cleaning. The child has to stay in the room. But inadvertently, often it's a positive time. You guys are interacting with one another, and you can do the little, oh, can you just put that up here for me? Oh, can you just do that? But really that you are taking the responsibility of the room cleaning. Then the next phase is that we're going to do it together. And you might need to watch for sneaky kids trying to game the system. But often it's that the child starts and then you follow, or you say, or you agree, is that, hey, I'm going to do these 3 things, you do those things. Or if you're making a bed, it is a true act of doing it together. And then as they're successful at that, you then have them do it by themselves. If that feels overwhelming, if that feels more than you can take on, then that might go back to the, I'm going to revisit this later. Like, there's other things in my life that are more important than going through a framework like that. But if something really is a long-term problem, then those would kind of be the low-hanging fruits of the approaches you'd make. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize for my delayed response. I'm currently eating dinner, and I did not want to be on the phone.
No, you're perfect. But actually, just to stay with your question for one more second, thinking about those cartwheels and those flips, that if they are always in your vicinity, if they are always by your door frame at your door, or if you feel like they are happening more, the more you're getting onto her about not doing it, then there might be an attention component in that. And that is just going back to that quote of if what you're going to do isn't going to make the situation better, do nothing. And is this kind of like the antidote to, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Part of the problem is that you're trying to come up with a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, or a problem that's not going to be solved that way. But then what would a good intervention be for? Then if you want to get the flips under your control of your attention, you want to define the times and show excitement about it. Hey, I want a gymnastics performance. When are we going to do it? After dinner. All right, I'm excited. Okay, where are we going to do it? All right, on the front lawn. Okay, the neighbors will see. You sure can handle that? It's got to be good. And so you're building it up, and like part of the signal is that you're sharing your excitement to see her do that. And so that's a way that you let her access it, to take it from something that's under her control, like she's getting your attention by making you mad. You're now flipping it around to she gets your attention by something that you share and enjoy together. So.
Yes, definitely. That makes sense, because she is definitely, like, she loves to show people her flips. And typically when I do send her to clean her room, I typically go downstairs. And so I hear her like flipping because of the levels. And so then I go upstairs and like, hey, like this isn't really what you're supposed to be doing. And at one point in time, I did attempt to set up this like reinforcement schedule of her flipping, and I got her like a gymnastics mat and a little, ladder thing. I don't really know what it is, but she loves it. And I think it's because my lack of continuing that then caused the regression, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And I am that's really common. Don't beat yourself up about it. Like you tried something, it worked for a little bit, it didn't work forever, and that is probably true of most systems that you set up. When I said about those marginal gains, it's the daily practice. I would expect to see an improvement in something over about 2 weeks. And equally, I'd expect you to do it for about 3 weeks. Like realistically, when you work with parents, like you got about 3 weeks of energy for this before life gets in the way. And so we're trying to see if we can get the meaningful gain in that relatively short period of time, but by doing it seriously every day. And then, it's important that when you do any intervention that you take it seriously and hold it lightly. I'm going to do this properly. And if it doesn't work, it didn't work. What can you do? Any other questions, guys?
Hi, yes. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. It's gonna sound bad, but how
like
can I pay attention when I don't want to pay attention? Like it's like, yeah, buddy, great flip, great flipping in the car, crashing monster trucks for the 78th time this hour.
Yeah.
Not to fake enthusiasm, but to fake enthusiasm, just so because I know they've worked really hard. This is like the better replacement of crashing monster trucks instead of crashing the car into me, into, glass. How could I?
Yeah.
It sounds
No,
bad,
no,
but
no, no, no. So there's several different things at play here. The um where to begin? All right. So it is okay to not give a toot about what they're up to. Like, as you say, I don't care. No one cares. And in the long term of your relationship, you want this to be a mutually beneficial relationship where you genuinely are sharing stuff with each other that you want to share, and that should continue through adulthood. Like, that's the relationship that you're trying to build towards. So it is okay to say, hey, I love cars, and I've kind of heard all I can hear about cars today. So can you play quietly, or I'm going to go over here and do this, or you could say, or you can talk to me about something different. But right now, I'm at my capacity for hearing about cars. The other part of it is that every person, every human, has almost like an attention diet that they need. Some people need lots of attention throughout the day. Some people really enjoy their own company and only need little doses of attention, but everyone kind of has an attention diet that they need. And with your son, this might be a reflection of he's been through a sparse period of attention, and to recognize that, okay, at this moment, you're not doing the things that I'm interested in, but I do recognize that this is a moment where you need my attention. And so you can just think about how you reschedule your day. So it's like, at this moment, you know what we need to do is the thing that I enjoy doing with you: board games, drawing, going outside on walks, whatever the thing is, but do something that you both enjoy at that period that you identify as that he needs my attention right now. So I'm going to make sure we do it. This is something I've had to do for myself. I used to get really annoyed that I would listen to podcasts on the way to pick up my kids, and then they would get in the car right at a good point in the podcast, and I'm trying to listen to the podcast, and they're trying to talk to me, and I'm annoyed at them. It's like, all right. This is a time where they need my attention. So now I've changed my habit, and we have playlists that we all like to listen to together. And so when they get in the car, the first thing to do is talk to each other. And then the next thing is we listen to music together. And I'm not getting annoyed about not listening to my podcast. And, so it's okay to readjust that. And then if it's a case that you feel like he needs attention all the time, that actually he can't go for periods without attention, it's likely that that waiting needs to be taught. And typically waiting needs to be taught professionally. It's, as I said before, you got about 2 to 3 weeks of doing an intervention before life gets in the way. And typically to teach waiting really well, that requires a bit more therapy time. And so that's something I'd speak to a provider about. Does that kind of capture all the things?
yes, and I like the way they said, like, it's great, cars are cool, but I need a break because I feel bad. I was like, oh, sorry, buddy, I can't stand cars right now. I'm figuring out the nice way to say, okay, I'm done, I'm tapped out.
Yeah.
Bye.
And again, you could go back to that bullet point about set your expectations for your attention. Hey, mummy is really tired. Mummy is going to go watch a show for 30 minutes. Mummy does not have energy to give you. That's an okay thing to say. That's a real part of how you might feel in your day, and you can communicate it, and then they can respond to it.
I just want to say thank you so much for asking that question, because I kind of feel like that's what happened with me and my child with all the ripping and flippings. Because at some point I've seen all the flips, I've seen the back bends, I've seen the walkovers, and I was like, okay, like we've been doing this for, like we gotta. And so now I feel like that's another thing that I need to do with, like, maybe I need to switch it up more, because she is a very active child. Like, she loves a lot of things, and not just gymnastics. Like, she's wonderful at piano, she's wonderful at tap, like weird random things she's wonderful at. So maybe I should like broaden that horizon more with the reinforcement, as a reinforcement for having her room clean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or even just if you see value with them in themselves, so say like the piano, again, about picking those small commitments. It's like, hey, for the next week, every time I hear her playing piano, I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to listen. That's it. And so the probability of you saying cool and meaningful things to your daughter about her piano playing has just increased tenfold. And so it's just really think about like this is what I want to give my attention to. Same with that tap. It's like, hey, I'm going to put some music on. I want to see you dance. I'm giving it my attention. This is where my attention is going to be, and that's going to see these things happen more.
I also had a question.
Yes.
So mine was about the ways you give attention with the eyes and location, and then also the taking away of it. Like the example you used with your mom, and like you and your siblings were arguing, and so because for me, for instance, my 2-year-old, I'll hear him and he's whining and whatnot because, oh, his little toy car that I know he knows how to turn on, but it's off and he wants me to come and turn it on for him. And so I do feel there are times to where, oh, if I give it a couple of minutes, he figures it out, but I feel bad for not immediately giving that to him. So I was I don't know if that's a loaded question, but
No. You've reminded me of a slide that's in my notes that didn't make it up here. All right. So we want to. What he's communicating is reasonable. How he's communicating it is unreasonable. Wanting you to turn on a toy for him, sure, it's nice. Yeah, I'll turn on that toy for you. But if you're being shouted at and having your legs kicked, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So typically in those scenarios, you want to give him an instruction to stop. Stop. Take a breath. Okay. Now tell me what you want me to do. And then be willing to give it that. And yes, in that instance, you are giving it some attention and you have moved closer and you are talking to them and you are giving them eye contact, all the attention. But what we're trying to do is to change the relationship with the attention, that the attention doesn't have to be the screaming. The attention can be asking with please and thank yous. And then similarly, wait. So in the example, he knows how to turn on the car, but he likes you to turn it on for him. Is that correct, Christina?
yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Literally the slide I have up, and I say we were on to this, the research is doing new things. So that might be an example of just a behavioral rigidity, that he likes the play to occur in a certain order, and that for many children, the stimuli that tells them that they can start to play is that they just see the toys and they start playing. But for your child, there may be a case of there is a chain that the play hasn't started until the chain is complete. Hey, mommy, can I play with the car? Yeah, you can play with the car. Goes over to the car, starts screaming, Mom, I need you to fix the car. The car gets turned on, and it's only once that chain has been completed that the play has now begun. And so that could sometimes be the case when kids are doing things that just seem they seem at odds with what they're trying to achieve. You know how to turn the car on. You want to play with the car. I've said you can play with the car. Play with the car. And the fact that there's now this other layer that's in there, that tells us that there might be something that needs more investigation.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Could it be possible that he's attempting to go to the next level of social engagement where he's trying to involve her in the play but doesn't know how?
Yes, that's an excellent point. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. Yeah, so rather than doing the stop, this is how you ask nicely, it can be stop. Hey, do you want me to play with you? Is that what you're trying to ask? So when we say that, hey, mummy, can you play with me? He says, hey, mummy, can you play with me? And then we get that play. But yeah, that's an excellent point. Okay. Does anybody else have a question? All right. Well, I don't use social media. So if you'd like to get in contact with me, that's my email, my phone number. And I do consultancy here in Austin. So if you would like to hear more from me, you can.
Only in Austin?
I guess I could do. I'm not driving to Dallas. Yeah, no, I guess that money talks. If you'll pay me 10 grand an hour,
I'll let
Go to
Chaz
Alaska.
answer that question.
but no, it's
That $100 bill is important.
yeah, $100.
That's what he was. That's what he was clapping at when you talked about money.
Gotta make that money. Okay, well, it was lovely, lovely meeting you all, and yeah, thank you for the opportunity at Verity. Yeah, been really nice.
Thank you so much, Glenn. This was really wonderful.
Thank you.